Dr. Simmons with another session of Preaching and Preachers on Facebook Live via StreamYard. Good afternoon. Come on in and let me know that you all are out there. Good afternoon. I know we've got chilly temperatures on this MLK Day around the country. I hope it's a day on for everybody and not a day off. Come on in and let me know you out there. Good morning to my people on the West Coast. Good afternoon to my people on the East Coast. Come on in and let me know that you are out there so that we can talk about this very important subject that we don't hear enough about in the African American faith community. Linwood McCarver, good to see you. Kimberly Edwards, good to see you. And when you come in, please type in the name of one other person who you know will be helped by this broadcast. Just type in their name and they can come on and catch it now, or it'll be up on my page for 2 weeks and they can watch it in their leisure. Come on in and let me know that you are out there. Come on in. I see people coming in slowly but surely. All right, all right, all right. We don't talk enough about this subject, and today is the day that we're going to do it. All right, all right, all right. Today we're going to do it. Good afternoon, Jenny Ewell, Linda Parker. Good to have you with me. Good to have you with me. Come on in, come on in. Reverend Malcolm, you're fine. All right, all right. All right, good to have you all with me. Come on in. Gonna give folk a few more seconds to come in. All right, Demetrius Edwards, good to have you with me. And when you come in, like I said, type in the name of at least one other person who you know will benefit from this broadcast. I have learned over 7 years that when we ask people to share, they do that, and it really helps get the information out. Angela Holcomb, all right, good afternoon. Good to have you with me. All right, all right, all right. We're going to go ahead and get started. We are praying for everyone who is sick. We're praying for those who are experiencing a season of bereavement. And then we're praying for justice in so many areas in this country as election season has begun on this MLK Day. We're praying for justice and that we hope that it's a day on and not off. A couple of quick announcements for women who are interested in becoming senior pastors. Go to the Women of Color in Ministry Facebook page and register. Not my page, the Women of Color in Ministry Facebook page. It's free, but you do have to register. The next class is February the 2nd at 8 p.m. And then I hope that you all will join me on Monday, January 29th, to hear from some of our sages, Dr. Cheryl Townsend Jilks, Dr. Kirk Byron Jones, Dr. Marvin McMickle, and Dr. Frank Thomas. All right, all right. People are still coming in. Type in the name of another person. You know people who need to know more about the environment. And when you hear some of the great information that my guest will provide, you really are going to wish that your friends had this information too. Let's go ahead and get started talking about African Americans and the environment. My first guest is Reverend Dr. Ambrose Carroll Sr. He is the founder and CEO of greenthechurch.org, which is the largest repository and catalyst for the environmental and sustainability movement built for and by the Black church. He is the president at large of the California State Baptist Convention, and he is a senior fellow with the Atlantic Fellows for Racial Equity. He sits on a variety of steering committees concerning justice and the environment, including the Environmental Justice Action Committee of the United States Environmental Protection Agency. He earned the BA in psychology from Florida Memorial University in Miami, Florida, a Master's of Divinity from Morehouse School of Religion in Atlanta, a Master's of Business Administration from Golden Gate University in San Francisco, and a Doctor of Divinity from United Theological Seminary. Welcome, Dr. Ambrose Carroll.
Thank you, Dr. Simmons. Glad to be here today. Blessings on you all.
Right. Next, we have Miss Robin Lewis. Miss Lewis is a Maryland environmental justice activist and community organizer, and has a long history of helping organizations become more sustainable and inclusive. She is the director for climate equity at Interfaith Power and Light, DC, Maryland, the Northern Virginia area. You all know that DMV triangle. And she focuses on helping to bring together Black faith leaders in the region to promote and advocate for just environmental solutions. She also works to help provide houses of worship with the knowledge and the resources. You are going to get good information today that you need concerning the Inflation Reduction Act and other state funding targets for climate justice. She also works as a community organizer in Maryland to eliminate trash incineration, ban fracking, advocate for zero waste, promote energy conservation. She is a member of the UCC Climate Justice Council. She's an active board member on Why Hunger, a nonprofit focused on grassroots solutions to poverty. In addition to obtaining her BA in economics and an MBA from Rutgers, she has a master's in sustainable urban planning with a concentration in climate change. She believes that she is called as a Christian to be a voice for environmental justice and equity in her community. Last but not least, we have Reverend Michael Malcom. Reverend Michael Malcom is the executive director of Alabama Interfaith Power and Light, and a licensed and ordained UCC minister. Reverend Malcom is the former senior pastor of Rush Memorial Congregational Church. He was my pastor, great pastor. He serves as the environmental justice minister for the Southeast Conference of the United Church of Christ. He earned the MDiv from the Interdenominational Theological Center, and he graduated from the Terry School of Business with an MBA, and he completed a postmaster's human resource management course at Cornell University. He also has completed other training in the area. He considers himself an impassioned environmental justice advocate. He sees environmental justice as the moral obligation to love your neighbor and the solution to the climate crisis. Reverend Malcom says there can be no environmentalism without environmental justice. If you help the people, you will heal the planet. Welcome, 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 everybody. Let's get to it, because I want you all to give us as much information as you can, because churches need this information and we need to increase. And I'm talking about the entire African American faith community. We need to increase our environmental acumen, okay? People need to do it, period, around the country, but our faith community needs to do it. So let's start with Reverend Malcolm. Tell us how you became involved in environmental efforts.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Simmons. First and foremost, let me say thank you for this invitation. And I am amongst family, so I know I'm in a good place. And lastly, let me make a correction. Dr. Simmons said that I was a pastor. I'd like to say I pastored Rush Memorial, and Dr. Simmons attended Rush Memorial, but in
He
all
was my
actuality,
pastor.
he was my pastor. And so I don't want to start it off that way. Let me answer that question. So I was sitting in a conference at Emory University, and I heard Reverend Dr. Gerald Durley speak. I was pastoring Rush Memorial at the time, and I had started a job as a community advocate for South Carolina Interfaith Power and Light. And it was in that moment Dr. Gerald Durley said, "How can I preach to them in the pulpit, shout them in my pews, but they can't breathe in public?" And that right there resonated with me to show me the practical aspects of ministry. And I began to get convicted about how I was going about ministry, because I wanted to shout to people. But how can I shout them and they have trouble breathing after they shout? I've
My
got to
goodness.
address the ills that happen to them in this world and what's happening right now, instead of trying to usher them into an otherworldly idea or perspective. So that's how I got started, and I've been running ever since. And then I hooked up with people like Dr. Carroll and Sister Robin and others. And being in community, Mama, that made me fight even harder, and
All
that
right.
keeps me fighting. So that's how I got started. Thank you.
Okay. Reverend Carroll, Dr. Carroll, how did you get started?
Oh man, let me see. I was a young seminary student at the ITC back in the early '90s, and there was a white classmate, Julie Tusus. She was always on our nerves because she always sat in front of the class. You know, she was always helping us out. And one day she had to do a sermon, and she talked about the environment and challenged us even on Christianity. And how can you be a Christian and aren't you responsible for the planet? And from that day, I learned from her, and it really humbled me. And from that day on, I just had my own just kind of passion, even for like picking up trash on the other side of the street, and just like like we should be responsible. Fast forward 2009, I read Van Jones' book, The Green Collar Economy, and he was really stressing to people of color this dynamic of the environmental movement, climate change. Soon became a Green for All fellow. And in fact, I was actually, like you, Pastor Malcolm, trying to pastor a church in Colorado. And after they put me out, I packed up everything on the car. I was headed back down to Louisiana with Bruce. I said, man, I'm about to go ride me some horses. And that night at the hotel room, one of the members came and shared some tithes and offering with us, of which we were grateful. And then I told the wife at about 3 o'clock in the morning, the Lord said, I can't go. I have to stay. And she said, stay and do what, baby? I said, well, there's a green meeting going on in the morning. And I believe I need to be there. She said, is they paying any money? I said, no, but I got to stay here and be at that meeting. After that, I became a Green for All fellow. And really just, even with that work, people in the community were there, a lot of people of color, but not a lot of people from church. And then I ran into Interfaith Power and Light. Sally Bingham came to Colorado, Episcopal priest who had started this organization, was really on fire. And so I connected with Interfaith Power and Light, of which I still work with in California. But that was an organization of faith, but not a lot of people of color. So we decided, let's bring these together and make sure that the Black church, there's never been a successful social movement without the tone and tenor of the Black church. And so we started Green the Church.
Miss Lewis, how did you get involved? How did you become an environmentalist?
Well, my mother was from New Orleans, so she was really into nature, and I don't know, she's from the South, so she was, taught me a lot, when I was young. So I always was an environmentalist, if you want to call it that. And in about 2011, I was in technology, certified project manager. So I was doing that kind of stuff, making money. And, the company went under. So it's like, okay, what am I going to do? So, I was involved with my church, involved with the social justice aspect, because UCC is really engaged in social justice. So I was involved. And all of a sudden, there was this channel called the Green Channel. And it doesn't exist anymore. Okay. And, I don't know why I turned this on. Of course, the Spirit led me. And I started saying, okay, that sounds great and wonderful, but what about us? What about black folk, right? So for me, I started looking at, okay, let me go back to school, because I love education. So I went back for another master's in sustainable urban planning with a focus on climate change. But I really focused my whole master's on affordable housing, displacement, and gentrification. And I started looking at how urban development occurred and how we are left out, how we're pushed out, and how we are the ones that suffer the most from environmental hazards, toxins, and all the other things, and housing, food, just name it. Any kind of justice you can name, in our environment, we suffer the most. And I'm from Jersey. So, I was right around the corner from Ironbound section. It's the most polluted area in Jersey. And of course, there's Black and brown folk there, right? So it just came together for me. And being the social justice director at my church, it just was just a natural fit for me to focus on, because knowing that, we're going to this walkable, you live, work, and play. Well, we don't live, work, and play. Right. We get pushed out into areas where we currently live that were allowed to become dilapidated. And of course, gentrification occurs in those areas that are now prime, and we get pushed further and further out. So, I started studying how, the Black community, Black and brown folks get pushed out. In fact, in the area I live in, there's 8 wards in DC. Ward 9 is considered Prince George's County, which is 63 right now percent Black. And most people get pushed to Ward 9. That's what they call Prince George's County. And of course, Prince George's County has drama, issues, all kinds of hazards. And now they're being pushed even further out. So you drive until you qualify. Well, when I say qualify, I mean until you can rent. I mean, we're even talking about rent. So because of all these injustices, God just put this on my heart to work with, my community, and also just, being a voice to not only educate, but advocate for issues around the environment and bring it together with faith. I mean, so that's kind of in a nutshell how I got involved, just, doing this for the past, I'd say 15 years now. As a, activist. I worked for water, name it. I worked in it. Okay. So that's kind of how I got here, through the grace of the Lord.
Yeah. Dr. Carroll, we, like I said, we know that the African American faith community is not at the table in so many instances when it comes to environmental issues, but they're everyday problems that affect Black folk, African Americans, okay? As an environmentalist, greening the church, what are some of these problems that you've seen? Just the everyday problems.
Well, I think, the everyday problems are cancer. The everyday problem is asthma. The everyday problem is children thinking that McDonald's and Fritos and stuff is real food, right? The everyday problem is us not understanding nutrition. Everyday problem is not having a food system. The everyday problem is not taking responsibility, but waiting on them and they to provide our needs, and and no longer knowing what our grandparents knew, how to put seed in the ground, and how to be healthy. I think those are some.
Those are some big ones. Those are some big ones. Reverend Malcom, for you, what are some of the everyday problems that you see in your work? I think you've muted yourself.
I can't get right. I'm
Just
grateful.
leave the buttons alone and you'll be good. Stop
I'm,
touching stuff.
I told y'all she was my pastor. I'm grateful that Dr. Ambrose started off with the higher level. I want to bring it to something a little bit more practical. Here are some everyday problems. Did you all know that there are people who live in our communities who worship with us who are paying upwards to 30+% on their utility bills?
Right.
And they
Yep.
can't even afford to pay their rent.
Yeah.
Yet they have to pay their utility bills out of that rent money. So they're living impoverished, and our systems that are supposed to support and help them are in all actuality robbing them. And they're locked into impoverished situations.
That's right.
Because they're trying to live.
Yeah.
And it costs like crazy to be poor. Did you know that there are people who have to make decisions on whether or not they'll be able to heat their homes or be able to buy medicine for the next month?
Right.
So these are practical issues. And Dr. Ambrose talked about McDonald's and Burger King. But did you know that in some communities, that's all you have? There are no other choices because there are no fresh food sources. And here in the South, they often put polluting facilities in our communities. And so there's no way you can go out and grow your own food the way they used to be able to do because your land is polluted. It's expensive to be poor. And that's one of those everyday issues that we wake up with and go to bed with at night.
My goodness. Ms. Lewis, for you and the work you do in Prince George's County and surrounding counties, okay, tell us about some of just the everyday issues.
So one of the major everyday issues in this area, of course, is congestion. So we have soot, we have air quality issues. Prince George's County, the Washington, D.C., as well as Baltimore, has been rated F by the American Lung Association in terms of air quality. That's a big issue. In addition, we still have a trash incinerator that is polluting approximately 30% of Baltimore's air. It's been there. It's out of compliance always. In fact, we subsidize that. With our tax dollars, we subsidize that pollution that is in a Black community and has been. That's one area. We have what they call natural gas power plants. We call them methane gas power plants. They are located in our communities. We have a community called Brandywine. It has 3 of them within a 10-mile radius. It emits various toxins. In addition to that, we have Superfund sites, which are sites that are contaminated. And what Reverend Malcom mentioned about the ground, we in addition to having toxic ground because of these various toxins in the ground, we also have lead in our water. And this is going on all across the country.
Right.
We have lead service pipes, and the replacement of those pipes take longer in our communities, because now there's laws around, the property owner has to submit in order to get, his lead pipes replaced. Well, of course, a lot of these people that live in areas where we live, their property owner, they don't care. They don't do that. So we're the last to be serviced. And so we're drinking lead in the meantime. So there's lead in our water. There's pollution in the air. I mean, we have unhealthy homes. For example, I know we're not trying to ban anything, but we are trying to bring attention to if you have a gas stove, you're breathing in NOx, even when the stove is turned off. So we have indoor unhealthy air quality in our houses and in our apartments. We're doing testing in people's homes and showing them the levels, and they're like, wow, I'm breathing worse levels than what the EPA requires outside. So inside, indoor homes, you're breathing in toxins that create asthma. That in our children, 42% of children who are exposed to indoor air pollution like gas stoves tend to have asthma. I'm one of them.
Yeah.
I have asthma. I've had it since I was young. So there's so many issues in our community, and it's about education, outreach, and what can we do. And a lot of it's based on advocacy for policies and for laws.
Yeah.
And that's I won't go on, but I get a little
I hear you.
passionate.
So, with all of the problems named, okay, explain to Black folk. I got a lot of Black faith community members watching this broadcast who are going to turn and watch the replay. Explain to churches why they need to care about environmental efforts. How, you all told us how bad conditions really are, but why must churches care? We don't do much in this area. So why should we care, Reverend Malcolm? Why must we care?
So I think I put myself on mute so I wouldn't be cussing and stuff. So I'm gonna try to hold that back. But I would say, because that question leads me to that place, to be honest with you. I would say that we should care because it's feasible. It's economically feasible. It's ecumenically feasible. And it's ecologically feasible. It's feasible. It's pertinent for us to care. It's our job to care. The problem is we have mixed priorities about what we care about. Yeah. So we tend to care more about the church building than we do the outside of the church.
Oh my goodness.
And so we put more effort into maintaining the building than the community that supports that building. And that's, I think, I don't know if it's that we don't care as much as we don't prioritize, if you will. Yeah. So I'll leave it at that, Rev, and I'm gonna try to stay off of mute.
Like I said, just don't touch anything. Dr. Carroll, why should churches care about this?
Oh, well, churches should care because the Bible says we should care. Right? God made us stewards, gave us, King James says dominion, right? And we translate, gave us stewardship, gave us responsibility, right? Yeah. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. But whose responsibility is it? It is our responsibility. It's not their responsibility. Sometimes we accept second-class citizenship, which means we pick the issues that we want, but the issues that come with dealing with, will the planet survive? Sometimes we look at that as above our pay grade. We look at that as above our ability, right? We don't have the power. And so I really think really a reevaluation of the power that God has given us. And we should care because it's life and death, right? We should care the same way. And again, and white folks separate stuff, right? And that's really not our way. And so we talk about this from an environmental standpoint, not because we're separate from the Black church, but because white folks separated, right? As another issue. This is just a justice issue, right?
That's right.
Right? This is the same. This is liberation theology. This is a justice issue, right?
That's a
and the fact that they're talking about it differently sometimes confuses us. But the reality is, we care about dead Black bodies, right? And our friend Reverend Jamal Calloway says sometimes we don't understand that there are oftentimes more dead Black bodies due to environmentalism than there are dead Black bodies due to police brutality or Black on Black crime, right? So if you care about life, then you have to care about this because this is about life. There's one congregation in Sacramento had 5 children that had childhood cancer. What you mean? Why should we care? There's 5 children in this church that's dying of cancer. They live in this area. What the hell is going on? I'm sorry, Pastor Malcom. Right. So yes, that's why we should care because it's simply a life issue.
Yeah.
Ms. Lewis, why should churches care?
I have to ditto both Reverend Ambrose and Reverend Malcolm. Reverend Ambrose, I want to just say, was the first introduction for me to mix the two environments to the church when I met him, helping to organize the Green to Church conference here in the Baltimore DMV area. So that brought it that really brought it together, because before that I didn't understand what I was, why, but learning about Green the Church. So, and then I met the passionate Reverend Malcom. So as I met more and more of Black ministers in this work, it was like, okay, that's why I'm drawn to this work. We as the Black church should care, like everyone said, because it's our life. Our life depends on it. In addition to that, about 78% of Black Americans are affiliated with some sort of religious affiliation. We are definitely much more connected in that way. So we have more power. We can help make change. And our community suffers the most.
Yeah.
We're watching our community, a lot of illnesses that we don't know how, like for instance, there's autoimmune issues that we're having more of than other populations.
Right.
That why we have more asthma, COPD, heart issues. We have, and when you mention food, those areas where there are only McDonald's and only KFCs are food swamps.
Yeah.
More food swamps. We have less access. I mean, to eat organic and healthy is expensive.
Yeah.
It's not cheap. I mean, so we have a lot of social issues, which to me are environmental issues.
Right.
Anything that touches us is environment. So we should, as a church, we always have been the instrument of change. And in order for us to change environmentally, we need to use what we have. And that is the church. We are, we started the environmental movement. So we need to not just finish it, we need to continue it and make sure it benefits our community.
I know that we started it, but somewhere along the way, we jumped off the train, okay? Or started getting on the train only every now and then.
Yeah.
And I know how big this issue is because number one, the people who are dying right now, but certainly for the future. So that said, I want to get, just a question to the two preachers, Reverend Carroll and Reverend Malcom. Throughout my life, I've heard a whole lot of sermons, read a whole lot of sermons, edited a whole lot of sermons, and still do. But I rarely hear sermons on the environment in Black churches. Why do you all believe that is the case? Reverend Malcom and then Reverend Carroll, tell us, why won't we preach about the environment? We're dying.
I to be honest with you, Doc, and I won't push back on you ever, but I'm gonna push back a little bit on this one.
Good, go ahead.
The reason being is because we oftentimes talk about the environment. Remember, the environment is where we live, y'all. It's the things that surround us that affect us. So anytime you talk about police brutality, you're talking about the environment. Anytime you talk about bail bonds, you're talking about the environment. Anytime you step out to feed folk, you're talking about the environment. What we're trying to do is take it a step further to make you question the systems that cause these issues. You address it all the time. What you aren't doing is going that step further to address the systems that cause it. There's a reason why you having to hand out food in your community. And the reason you have to hand out food in your community is because it doesn't exist in your community. However, here is where I wanted to go back and grab that why should we care? And let me tie it into this.
Okay.
It's not fair because not every community has food apartheid. Not every community suffers with these excessive energy bills. Not every community has health disparities.
Okay.
And so what I'm trying to get us to do is address the systems that leave us without while others have. That's justice, as Reverend Ambrose just said. That's justice. So we address it all the time. We just don't couch it in what it should be or where we could couch it, which is the environmental space. Now, why don't we couch it in that space?
Yeah.
It ain't sexy. That's just the bottom line. It's dirty and it's nasty. Now,
I just wanted you to go there. Okay.
I like to play in the dirt. I like to play in the grind. Not everybody does. Some people like the camera in their face and they want to be sharp and they want to be pretty. Me, I cuss. And sometimes I do it to get my point across, but sometimes it's just the word that fit. In those times, you might not want to see a pulpit Reverend Malcom, but you need to see a policy Reverend Malcom at that table because he's standing up to address the systems that cause us the ill that we're dealing with. So I don't feel like we don't address it. I feel like we address it. We just don't know how to couch it or where to put it.
How to couch it or how to take it further.
Right.
Right. Okay. So Dr. Carroll, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually put. I mean, in the Black church is many things, y'all. She's many things. I think, and I totally agree and want to hit on that. Dr. Warnock writes a book entitled "The Divided Mind of the Black Church." So as we talk about liberation theology, we have to understand that all Black churches are not etched in liberation theology.
That's right.
And the reality is, a lot of us have been trained to not be responsible for the planet. Matter of fact, some of our musicology, depending on what you believe about what you are saying, right? This world ain't my home, right? I'm going to live up yonder, right? Yeah. Which means that I'm on this planet as rough and as tough as hell, and I'm just get me out of here. In fact, some of us have agreed that the planet is wicked. And some of us, are embarrassed by our aunties and our uncles who know how to go get that medicine out in woods. And some of us, since we saw roots, I'm in California. Our convention started. We have a camp now. It's 110 acres. But after they watched Roots in about 1979, we stopped going out there to that land and we go to the hotels because we don't want to be associated with life. Some of us are not comfortable. I went camping once and the dog got to acting crazy, walked in my tent, man. I freaked out. The white folk was mad at me, but they don't know the epigenetics of my DNA. There's some stuff going on with me and dogs that they may not understand, right? Yeah. Some of us, when it comes to being outside, right around these trees, we remember that song, Strange Fruits. So some of it is our theology that keeps us from embracing the planet because some of our
Definitely our theology.
So that being said, I'll also say that when my daddy preached, though, and when he talked about grandmama when it wasn't harvest time in the winter, how she had to go up in the cupboard and find her some flour, some meal, and some salt, and knead that dough and make them biscuits. That was an environmental sermon, right? When he talked about growing up and not having shoes and using stuff to put in his shoes in the bottom of his shoes, so they had holes in it. But then he said, I got shoes and you got shoes and all God's children got shoes. He wasn't necessarily talking eschatologically. He was talking about what would happen with his children. That's an environmental sermon. The reality is environmentalism is not our language. And we get like twisted because why are we talking about they like us? That's not our language. When we talk about healing of the planet and healing of individuals, we're talking about restoration. Right, we're talking about redemption. Our language is revival, right? So I'm not trying to get people to be environmentalism. We're already revivalists. We already believe that everything will be well. That's how we talk about it.
Okay.
So about over here is environmentalism. That's fine. But as Michael said, as we go deeper into our own conversations, then we can sit at the table with others, right? But we got to own our own language and be fine with that. So yeah.
Well, we got to own our own language, and then we have to take it further. We've got to know that there's systems that we have to deal with. There's system issues. There's systematic issues that have to be addressed. So Ms. Lewis, so we've talked about it. We know the problem is severe. We know that the church has a critical role. How can churches, regardless of their size, because a lot of the people who watch this broadcast have 30 members, 50, 100 members. How can they get involved and help us do less harm to the environment? Are their systems or whatever? How can churches get involved?
Well, there's a lot of organizations that are currently doing this. Reverend Ambrose's organization, Green the Church, excellent, excellent way. Also, I think first we start with learning. We start with being educated about our environment and what it means. As I don't know which one of you mentioned this, but I think Reverend Ambrose, about our language. When I say environmental justice, people think trees hugging and things like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I typically have to explain. I'm talking about your environment, whatever that is. That your housing, your food, your transportation, every single thing that impacts us. Formerly incarcerated folks coming back into the community and not being able to live. All of that is environmental. So first and foremost, get familiar, learn what's going on in your community. So that's one way to start. You already probably have ministries that are dealing with these things. It's just a matter of expanding it. And I think you mentioned, Reverend Malcom, about the justice. The piece of it, it's not just charity. It's not just feeding people. It's about dealing with the systems, like you said, Dr. Simmons, the systems, and the way to deal with those is through policies, laws. We have to get engaged in advocacy. We have to know what's going on. And it's not that it's such a hard thing to do. It's not. It's just paying attention to what is happening. There's multiple legislative things going on. There's tons of Black organizations doing environmental work in various aspects of justice. So it's about justice and getting to the root cause. And the root cause, a lot of times, is poverty, is other issues that, stem in our community. That's number one. The other way that's really important, there is $369 billion that was allocated through the Inflation Reduction Act. Of that, approximately 45 to 60 billion is allocated to communities that are overburdened, underserved. And those are communities that the government deems overburdened, underserved. And, I have a different definition of that. Okay, but let's take their definition. That means we could go after some of that money, right? $60 billion. And a lot of the money is hidden in 12 different departments of the government. So, you got to know where the money is, but there are organizations that can help. In fact, I want you all to look it up. I don't know where I could put this in the.
You can just put it in the chat.
Yeah, I only have a private chat, but I could tell you, everybody, if you just look up environmental justice, thriving communities, technical assistance center.
Say that again.
It's called Environmental Justice, Thriving Communities, Technical Assistance Centers. Each area around the country has organizations that were granted money.
That's right.
To actually help nonprofits do various things, whatever it is if it's community, if you want to do community gardens or gardens on your own land or farming, if you want to do solar, of course, now there's benefits to doing solar. You could get between 30 to 70% of your money back, that the cost of a solar project, through some of the programs, tax incentives through the Inflation Reduction Act. You no longer have to have a tax, like a tax liability. Most nonprofits don't. They will literally give you the money back directly, the Treasury Department. So there's all kinds of solar incentives, not just solar, but charging stations, electric charging stations, energy efficiency. All of those things are tax incentives. And there's rebates and there's grants. So you have the incentives, rebates, and grants. All of this is under the Inflation Reduction Act's funding for communities like ours.
And isn't there even funding to help people who can't pay gigantic power bills?
There's funding for just about everything. And what I would say to houses of worship, use the technical assistance centers. They can direct you.
Say that name one more time.
Okay, it is look up environmental justice, thriving communities, technical assistance centers.
And they're everywhere. They are everywhere.
Yes. So, for example, on where I live, the National Wildlife Federation is the technical assistance. Underneath them are different community organizations that help the individual communities. So in each region of the country, there is an overarching organization, and under that are different smaller organizations that will come out that will help you figure out how to write grants if that's what you need, or where the money is for your particular community's needs.
And these technical assistance centers are also, they're helping people put together the grants. They're helping people in long-term studies.
Yes.
They're helping people, you know, in areas where you've got, you know, 10, 15, 20 children, you know, dying, where you've got high rates of asthma. The money is out there. So, you know, we've got to do a better job. We've got to do a better job in calling upon Miss Lewis, Reverend Carroll, Reverend Malcom. We can't continue to say we didn't know. Okay, the we didn't know days. We can't continue that. There is so much that we can do. Reverend Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, Doc, I want to say, to simplify things, get in touch with Green the Church. And I don't mean that to be facetious. I'm really serious about that.
No,
when it comes down to who's moving in the Black church, who's moving this conversation, Reverend Carroll and Green the Church. I told him I don't want to be the bishop. I like being dirty, but I let him be the bishop. And so please, please, please get in touch with Green the Church, because we are housing that information, and we have contacts throughout the nation. And so the tic-tacs that they're talking about are the technical assistance centers. We actually know the people. So please, please, please don't hesitate. And in speaking with the administration, and Reverend Carroll and Robin can attest to this, the reason why these tic-tacs and the reason why this infrastructure has been put in place is because folks that are from the church have long been left out of these conversations.
Right.
But we advocated for this. We advocated. And when I say we advocated, like I said, y'all want us at the policy tables.
That's right.
We advocated for this. And so they're trying their best to make these programs and the language accessible for us. Get in touch with Green the Church. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, well, I just want us to know, because I know the people who advocated for years for so much to happen. Yeah. And through the Biden administration, it finally happened. And now too many instances, we're asleep. We are just asleep. So I don't want anybody to come on any broadcast and tell me we don't know what to do. Yeah. Don't even try it. Okay? So Ms. Lewis, Dr. Carroll, Michael, you can contact any of these people. Okay? Amen. Green the Church, the technical assistance centers. It's not complicated. It's about picking up the telephone, sending an email. We've got to do better. We can't continue to hold church in neighborhoods that are toxic, and it not matter. I mean, tanks underground with houses on top of the tanks.
That's right.
Everybody in the neighborhood sick.
That's right.
And we act like we can't figure that out. We go do church, and indirectly, Reverend Malcolm, you were right. We'll talk about environment, and then we'll go home, and nothing. Yeah. So we don't have environmental revivals.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amen.
Well, Reverend Carroll was getting ready to have one. Green the Church about to have one.
All right.
Hey, they about to do it big in California real quick. We need to do it all throughout.
But I don't know why.
So I
Go ahead,
think
Brother Carroll.
if I can say, it all comes back to responsibility,
Mhm.
and just taking responsibility and knowing that it's ours to take. In
Right.
1910, Black folks owned over 14 million acres or 19 million acres of farmland. Right now, we have under 4 million. We were literally lynched off of that land. We
Mhm.
moved to these urban environments, and a lot of times, even those who own homes paid more. But our grandparents, they sold chicken dinners and sweet potato pies and had note burning services. In our
That's
communities, we don't own the barbershops, or we don't own where we eat our soul food restaurants. Even our funeral homes are being bought up by third parties.
that's right.
So what we still own in the Black church are our church buildings. And we're really leaning on our fiduciary agents. This is a call to trustees. All of the trustees and elders of our congregation, those who have responsibility for these buildings, it is vastly important. $60 billion hitting our communities. And we're one of the only institutions in the community that can stand up and talk about infrastructure. So right now, Green Church is doing revenue generating microgrids, where we're helping churches to actually bring in $200,000, $300,000 a year and owning their own microgrid. These are the things that are possible right now that we have to engage with. And further, like all these tic tacs. And the thing, what we're trying to do is make sure that the Black church itself has a space where we're dictating that not only people are coming in to help us, but we're coming in to help ourselves, right? Because ultimately, the folk who are coming out of our communities, going to school, getting all this education, everybody's not going to be a pastor, but there's plenty of room for people to come in this section right now and help our communities grow and flourish. But we want to make sure that our pastors are on our boards, that our ministers, that people in our community are on these boards for these nonprofits. And all of our churches are nonprofits, but all of us have to get our 501c3s together. This is work that we have to do. This is perhaps, and we really fought for all the asthma stuff, but we lost a lot of the environmental justice concerns with the last legislation. We still have brownfields. We still have pollution. But what we gained was on the business side.
Right.
That's why there's 60 billion sitting here. But then we got to get our business acumen up, because we already marched that y'all please come take these facilities out. They didn't. But the money is here, and the only buildings that we have are these Black churches. So it's time for all of our Black churches to get our infrastructure up. We just got a large decarbonization grant where we're making sure that all of our Black churches, big and small, have clean air and clean water. We want to make sure when folk are shouting, it's because they feel with the Holy Ghost, not because they're having an asthma attack. Some of our churches is not even safe to go in, right? It's not safe because those uncles, those grandfathers that used to come and take care of the church, those men and women have passed. So we're entering these buildings, and the buildings are toxic.
Yeah.
So we're getting these buildings, even in the Midwest. Right now, people are having church and they don't have heating. Right now. I'm just putting on your fur coating. Come on, first and third. This is what's happening. And so it's time for us to do battle. It's time for us to pull together.
Ms. Lewis, you wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I loved what you just said. I also want to add the fact that in one of the things that I'm working on this year is a collective, looking at Black churches collectively so we can share information. Because what I'm finding, I'm like the conduit. I know all of these Black faith leaders in the DMV, and they're like, well, I need this, or where can I go? Can you tell me an example of another church that has done this? You mentioned microgrids, an example in the region. So, I'm serving as that connector. So developing this collective organization in which actual churches, Black churches, can access information to know who's done what, where. We can share our knowledge in a collective way. So that's something that I'm working on, a beloved DMV Environmental Justice Collective in the region. But I think that there's enough work for all of us. I mean, there's so much work.
Yeah, and the information, I just want people to know the information is out there. I am sick and tired of the excuses about why we don't fix stuff. Okay.
Right.
There are young folk in our church who are concerned about this issue, and they would love to start a committee to get charging stations in your church, to make sure your water's clean, to do all kinds of things to help people lower their utility bill. They would love to lead it, but nobody asked them and nobody welcomes them to do it.
Mhm.
And I'm just saying that there is money available, and in 2024, there should not be not one black church, okay? Several thousand black churches listen to my broadcast over the course of a year, several thousand.
Right.
And you shouldn't have another revival if you're not willing to work to make your environment safer, less toxic, to help your city. You shouldn't have another revival until you deal with this issue. Until you deal with this issue. And I don't expect pastors to know everything, but I do expect them to reach out to the people they know and say, what can be done? Here are my thoughts, my concerns. Who should I call? Who's, like you said, who's working on this? Give me an example. These three individuals that you see on your screen, okay? You can reach out to any of them. On that flyer, I put all of their organizations. They will get you the information. If they don't have it, they'll get you to the people who do.
That's right.
They will get you to, they have the information. I don't care if your church has 5,000 members or 5 members.
That's right.
You can do more.
That's right.
Than you believe. Don't let people run you out of your community, make you sell your building, and certainly continue to dump in your neighborhood and you say nothing. Okay?
Preach.
You can't do that in 2024.
Preach.
You just can't do it. We're just about out of time. Dr. Carroll, you got any final words for us?
Listen, just God bless you, Dr. Simmons. Just thank you for being you. Thank you for staying on the wall, filling in the gap for so many of us, for leading us, for being called to pastor us in the midst of everything that's going on in this season. Love you. I wish there were 20 of you, but one is doing just fine. So God bless you.
No, we need about 19 more. We need about 19 more at least.
The Lord may have broke the mold. I believe the Lord may have broke the mold.
Bless you, man. Bless you. Reverend Malcolm, you got final words for us?
Now, if we got 19 more, I just hope they don't know me, because you wear me out by yourself. So get on me all the time.
You can tell he's an African-American preacher. He's very dramatic and engages in hyperbole. You can tell. You can tell.
Thank you all for, thank you, Doc, again for the invitation, and thank you all for listening. I do want to again plug in Greeting the Church. That should be your one stop. That's the easiest source for you to go in, and you can always reach out to me via Facebook or however. For those that know me, you know, at any time you can get in touch with me. But I will tell you, I'll likely point you to Greeting the Church, because that is the hub for our Black church and Black church thought around the environment and environmental justice. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis, give us some final words, because you're there where they're giving out. You know all of those departments and who's giving out what. Give us some final words.
Well, I would just say finally that as all of us have said, it is our responsibility to take care of our community. Mm-hmm. And my word to you all is faith without works is dead. We have to do what we believe. That's right. And we believe in the health and wellness of our people. So it is our responsibility as the Black church to take care of each other. So whatever you can do, like everyone said, we're all here for you. Right. We'll likely point you to Greeting the Church. If I can help locally, I'm focused more local. Right. I will do that. Reverend Malcom as well. We know how to point to each other. That's how we all got here. We pointed to each other. Right. So we support each other, and we would love to support you and your needs.
And
so please,
you all heard that.
And listen, also, I would just want to add Reverend Dr. Heber Brown of the Black Church Food Security Network.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Forget him. That's the brother.
And needed.
Amen. Amen. Doing great work. Great work. That's all I got time for. Remember, if you are a woman who wants to become a senior pastor, go to the Women of Color in Ministry Facebook page. And now my page, go to their page and register. It's free, but you got to register. The next class is February the 2nd at 8 p.m. And then on January the 29th, join me to hear from some of our sages. Dr. Cheryl Townsend Jilt, Miss If It Wasn't for the Woman Herself. Dr. Kirk Byron Jones, Preaching in a Storm, Resting in a Storm. And the Art of Jazz, Dr. Marvin McMickle and Dr. Frank Anthony Thomas on the 29th. As always, thank you all for hitting my Cash App. I do this as an independent scholar, so I appreciate your generosity. We're in year 7. Well, we're still in year 7, okay? And we just got some amazing broadcasts coming up. And last but not least, I say this at the end of every broadcast, share the video. It won't cost you anything to share this video. I'm going to be talking about the environment again later in the year because we've got to get this. We have just got, when I first heard how much money was available,
I
was told who was not accessing it, I just said, no. We're going to do better in 2024. God bless. I hope everyone can stay warm and safe over the next couple of weeks in very, very difficult weather. Take care, you all. God bless. Thank you to my guests for your amazing work that you all are doing. It's hard work. It's hard work. It's the work below the radar. People don't post about it. You don't get accolades, but do know that we really do appreciate your work. God bless you all. Take care, everyone.